Good morning and welcome to Opinionated Marketers with me, Charles Nixon, and Kieran Kapoor. We are discussing the issue of climate and upbeat stories about the progress that is, or perhaps not, being made. And we were discussing a few minutes ago, Kieran, the flight of Virgin 787, which takes off today.
It does. London to New York on. Is it technically it's waste oil? Is that the phrase?
I believe so, yes.
And quite a technological advance, big change. Is it going to make a massive impact to our carbon output? No. Is it a good news story in that it's another step forward towards the right things? Absolutely.
I think it is a good news story, and possibly, it could herald the change. The one thing that I have noticed, certainly since the end of the pandemic, has been this growth and rebound in international air travel. And air travel and sea travel do get publicity about the amount that they contribute to carbon emissions. Nearly most of the conversation, though, tends to be about ground transport. So I think it's important that we consider the good news stories and progress that is being made. And indeed, perhaps indeed the change in attitudes that is coming along in terms of what you can and can't do from a marketing perspective with ground transport. I think you saw an advert was banned by Toyota.
Yes, the Advertising Standards Authority banned an ad from Toyota on greenwashing grounds, but actually on the grounds that it was encouraging people to go off-road and therefore damage the environment, which I thought was, or the ecology, which I thought was a fantastic. It was the first time that the ASA has banned an advert on those grounds, on the grounds that it was ecologically unethical. It's a very, very interesting ruling, and it well pays to reread it.
I think it is groundbreaking is probably not necessarily the right word, but it certainly puts a marker in the ground as to what is and isn't likely to be allowed in terms of encouraging unenvironmentally friendly activities. And from a marketing perspective, responsibility is, I think, writ large these days for most corporations. And the point that it indicates is that marketers have a significant role to play. I think they also have a role to play in the fact that, with COP28 coming along, the likelihood is that there will be a lot of doom and gloom stories about the way we are not proceeding to keep under 1.5 rise, and therefore it's going to be down to individuals and companies to make the major contribution. States seem to be lacking in their commitment. So I think from a marketing perspective, companies really do need to step up and show that they're committed to reducing environmental impact of their activities.
There's an interesting advertising campaign going on in France at the moment, which is anti-Black Friday. So we're talking, I think technically Black Friday was a couple of days ago, but it seems to go on for about a month. And Black Friday encourages rampant consumerism. And the French government have introduced a series of adverts where they have the anti-buying assistant in the advert that says, when a customer says, which of these two blue tops should I buy, the assistant says, but you don't need to buy either of them. The top you're wearing is lovely. And I thought that was a really interesting campaign that's state-driven to encourage non-additional consumption.
I've not seen that, and I think it's a very interesting one where the state steps in to basically act as conscience. There are possible implications from that in terms of what some people might term Big Brother. But there is a very, very good point about things like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and all the things like Singles Days in China, that it does encourage what one might call wanton consumerism. And the result of which is that we are destroying the planet by consumption of goods that we really don't need or don't get used. I think the Ellen MacArthur Foundation for Circular Economy recorded that somewhere around I can't remember which particular group it was, but we now purchase twice as many garments and use them for half the time. than we used to do. And there is really no need for it. Fast fashion has considerably damaged not only the environment but several economies in the developing world, where second-hand clothes now basically preclude the development of a garment industry in those countries, which would have been the first area of economic development.
It's very important, as you say, that we do talk about some of the more positive aspects that are going on. The French government's initiative, I think, is really fascinating. Yes, you could say it's nanny state. I imagine there's some economists that are concerned that the French government is not encouraging people to buy, which actually obviously drives the economy. There is a big argument that says we shouldn't measure growth in the economy in just the amount that consumers purchase. There are other ways of measuring things. But it is an interesting view. Can I bring in the Swedish campaign? Because I just thought it's my campaign of the month, frankly, which is a little Swedish town which is encouraging people to say hi to each other, because it's winter, it's cold, it's very dark. And people are becoming quite isolated post-COVID. We all know that isolation, we talked about it last time, you had a survey that said that loneliness was a global problem. And there's this very, very sweet little Swedish campaign that just encourages you to say hi to people in your community. It's not creepy, it's just a nice little thing to try. I did notice it's generated quite a lot of comment around the world. In the UK, there's been quite a north-south divide. In the south, we don't always greet our neighbours, or we do that sort of good morning thing, which I'm told would not be acceptable in the north. The French apparently turn around and go, well, how ridiculous, because every time you walk into a shop, you would greet everybody. It's just automatic. But it's been really interesting how different cultures have treated this and seen this. But it's a lovely little campaign.
I think it's a very nice idea, and I do think it points towards the need for social cohesion, which has been lacking from the pandemic. And certainly living in villages in the UK, that sort of thing is the norm, where you would say, in fact, if you didn't say good morning to everybody, even if you didn't recognise them, you would be concerned that you might be upsetting somebody. And so it's a very important aspect, I think. But it also does drive the... do I feel happy? Yes, I feel happy because I'm talking to people. Therefore, I don't necessarily need to be happy by buying something. And I do think that there is an element here where we tend to see consumption as a means by triggering the endorphins in our system as an only way of satisfying a need to feel a little kick sometimes. So retail therapy, as it used to be called, is something that perhaps will take a little bit of a dive if we're more happy with people. And I think, yeah, the Swedish idea is a good one, and we should all be practicing it. I shall certainly try it next time I go on the tube in London, see what happens.
Oh, good luck with that.